refer him to my good colleague who's specialist in seizures within the same group practice. I can bill 99201, but my colleague cannot. He has to bill 99211. So that's an important one to know within group practice as well. But the general timing is 3 years. So, like I said, E&M codes are assigned based off of whether they're new and whether they're established. And it's based on a review of the patient's documentation and determination on how extensive the level of service was. Everything that is being derived from the HPI, the physical exam, the review of systems. If it is not detailed, you will not get paid a high level, or you will not be able to assign a very good code. So each E&M code descriptor outlines specific key components that needs to be met in order to use the particular code, which we'll go through. So there are two documentation guidelines that people use, one from 1995, one from 1997. Both of them are implemented by the AMA and CMS. The information differs slightly, but both sides are generally acceptable. The 95 and 97 documentation differ in their explanation of the physical exam. So 95 includes examination of specific body areas and organ systems, whereas 97, the body areas are not established. So for example, in the realm of psychiatry, 95 doesn't need to be used, the body organ system is a whole. So 97 is appropriate to use, but you can use either or. So how do we get the highest level of care code? It's primarily based on the first three. There are 7 components, but it's primarily decided on the first three. The history, the physical, how difficult it was to make the decision. And then counseling, coordination of care, nature of the presented problem, and time. Again, time you want to stay away from. So the level of detail that you collect in your history of presenting illness is very, very, very important. Some of the things that you want to also consider are the safety of the patient, red flags, questions that you would typically want to ask to make sure that you have a holistic view of the patient from their HPI. We're going to use a case to specifically. Determining the extent of the history, it's categorized in 4 different sections. Problem-focused, expanded problem-focused, detailed, and comprehensive. So if your HPI is pretty brief, you don't have a review of systems, you don't document the past medical history, past social history, past family history, most likely it's a problem-focused exam that's dictated, and that will equivalent to a low code. 201 or 211. If you have a brief HPI, a review of systems that's there and it's based off of the patient's presentation, then that has some higher power. If you have an extended HPI with a full review of systems that's documented and relevant past medical history, past family history, and social history, it will be a higher And then, like I said, the complete comprehensive is going to be something that documents everything. In this realm, EMRs have been really good. They help us to see all of those components. Every time you do a review of systems, it's always good to document positive or negatives in at least 3 things in one system. So for respiratory, if you document no cough, no wheezing, no shortness of breath, 3 will then, within one system or above, is considered to be fulfilling for one organ system. So if you do that for all of the different organ systems, that is considered to be complete. So problem focused is a limited examination of this is for the physical exam. Limited examination of the affected body or the organ system. Person comes in and they have chest pain. You evaluate their CVS component. You don't do anything else. This is pretty much going to be what it is. Extended problem focus is going to be that you examine that area and some of the other areas that are relevant. So instead of just doing the cardiovascular exam, we do the respiratory exam as well because of the comorbidities. And detailed would be that you're doing a much more complete exam. So wherever your focus is, if it's the heart, you also do heart, lungs, abdomen, and neurologics. And a comprehensive exam includes it all. On a new patient, it's important to have a comprehensive exam. And on a new patient, all 3 postulates need to be of the highest level. So all 3 postulates need to be considered in order for it to be decided. So on a repeat patient, on a follow-up, 2 of the 3 need to be decided upon as within their realm. So if you have a really good history of presenting illness and you've done a good review of systems and you have a little bit of past family, past social, that will work to build at a high level, a high code for a follow-up patient. But for a new patient, it should be comprehensive. How is the medical decision-making measured? Oftentimes, when we get a new patient, they come in sometimes with a lot of paperwork. They come in with a history of having an ECG, having an echo. They come in with some of their own doctor's information, or if they're being referred to a sleep specialist, they're coming in with doctor's notes. Those notes will, if you need to document inside of your documentation that you are reviewing past records. And it's not good enough to just write reviewing past records. You need to say reviewed MRI, which reveals blah. Or you can say reviewed MRI, see addendum for results. And when the bill goes in, the documentation that's going to be provided is going to be your documentation from that encounter plus the documentation that you reviewed. So the number of diagnoses that you're reviewing as well. A person who comes in with sleep apnea most likely is going to have high blood pressure, is going to have diabetes, is going to have some cardiac pathology like hyperlipidemia. So you are evaluating all of those things. You are billing for the diagnostic codes for those things as well. If you do that, then it shows the level of decision making was higher. And so it's important to bill for every single comorbidity that the patient has. It increases your proof that this work was hard. You weren't just considering sleep apnea, you were considering the patient as a whole. So, the number of diagnoses is one of the postulates for medical decision making. The data that's reviewed is another postulate. And the risk for complications and morbidity and mortality. I've seen a lot of EMRs now, they have, if you put in a specific ICD code, it will auto-populate into your plan and your assessment that certain things were discussed, the risks, the benefits of a certain intervention, medications with pluses and minuses for like what the benefits are and what the side effects are. So risk of complications, the amount of data that you review, and the number of diagnoses that you put into the diagnosis. Assigning new patient E&M codes are 99201 to 205. All components must be considered, which is the history, the physical exam, and the medical decision making. So for example, 99203, you would identify a detailed history, a detailed physical exam, and the medical decision-making was low complexity. So you have a young patient who comes in with sleep apnea or snoring, and you do a full physical, you do a detailed exam. He doesn't really have many signs or symptoms, but because of the snoring and because he's obese, you decide to order a sleep study. That would be a low complexity, and then we get 203. So in general, this is the way that it goes. We want to be at 99205 all day, every day. So history, physical exam, and medical decision-making need to be within that realm. First patient, all three have to be considered. Follow-up patients, 2 of the 3 have to be of high complexity and comprehensive. So established patients, like I said, 9921, 2 and 2 to 215. 2 out of the 3 have to be met in order for you to have that. So another example descriptor, 99213, would be an expanded problem-focused history, an expanded problem-focused exam, and then again, the only complexity for medical decision-making. So 99211 is the lowest level established patient code. So this is when patients present with minimal problems that require little if any history, physical exam, or medical decision-making. It doesn't really rely on key components, and it describes, established patient visits that don't necessarily require a doctor. So if a patient's coming in for a flu shot, if they're coming in for a blood pressure check, in between when you order the sleep study and when you get the results. These are things that can be checked by a nurse, and you can code them that way. Doctors don't need to be present. So the other ancillary contributing components are the level of counseling that the patient gets, the coordination of care, and making sure that you get services for the patient, and the presenting problem in itself, and the total time that's needed to do everything that you need to do for your patient. Like I said, the first 3 are the more important ones that the decision based on the code is being made, but these are also components that help you to justify either a higher level of billing or a lower level of billing. So encoding based on time, 99201, the physician spends about 10 minutes performing the service. E&M codes can be assigned by time if the counseling and the coordination of care is more than 50% of the time that's spent with the patient, and it must be face-to-face. 99204 is when the patient spends 45 minutes performing the service. Like I said, this is, depending on the complexity of the patient, it doesn't really take these things into account. So this is not a trend that we want to be building in, because if we start building this way because it's easier, Medicare is like, okay, well, then let's just make this the standard. And then the justification of why you have a higher level of care oftentimes will not be able to be had. And you're going to end up with more appeals because the level of payout that you get for billed based off of time is going to be different than billed based off of complexity. So in general, E&M documentation, the medical record needs to be complete, it needs to be legible. If it's not documented, the rationale for why you're ordering the diagnostics and other ancillary tests needs to be easily inferred based off the documentation. The past and the present diagnoses should be easily accessible to the treating physician. The appropriate level of health risk factors should be identified. Patient's progress, the response to the treatment, the revision of the diagnosis as you continue to see this patient needs to be done. The CPT and ICD-10 codes reported on the health insurance claim, and the billing statements should be supported by the documentation within the medical record. In the case of an appeal, you're going to want to send more information to them. And by having a complete and diverse medical record, you'll get the highest level of billing that's out there. Speaking of billing, claim forms. It's really nice now because most claims are done electronically, and all standardized electronic transactions that require a bunch of information, the patient's personal information, the insurance information, information about the patient's condition, information about the service that's provided, the provider and their information, the facility and their information. Claims form has patient information, their name, their address, phone number, birthday, relationship status, employment status, and typically a patient signature within the file. Like I said, their insurance information. It's very easy to make mistakes here, and if a mistake is made here, this is an automatic denial. If a G is written into the insurance policy instead of an E, I'm automatic denial. It doesn't even go in front of a person to be reviewed. So making sure that your front desk staff is adequately inputting the information and the name. The biggest problem with like quick returns, quick denials is the name is not appropriately documented. So if the patient has a relationship to the primary insurers, like as a spouse or as one of the kids, you need also the information for the primary patient who has the insurance. So you're required to state their employment, whether if this condition is related to a work-related injury, an auto accident, or another accident, and this helps with medical legal. It also requires you to put information about the service that's provided, the date of the current illness, the injury of the pregnancy, the history of presenting illness, the diagnosis and diagnoses. Additional information, the date of service, the place of service, the procedure code with modifiers, but we were not using modifiers, charges for each service and the total charge, days or the unit of service, how many units were provided, and then the provider's MPI and the facility's MPI. There are these things called diagnostic pointers, which link the procedure to the diagnosis and helps it to justify the medical necessity for the patient. We also include information that clarifies whether a patient can walk or can't walk as a result of the condition. This is for work-related injuries as well. It asks for dates that the patient is unable to work, or his or her occupation. And it also asks for dates of hospitalization if the patient was hospitalized. As I mentioned, it will require a lot of information from the provider as well. Their MPI, the doctor's MPI, the facility's MPI, and the date, the address, zip code where the person's establishment is. Pre-approvals. Okay, so pre-certification, pre-authorization, and predetermination are some of the primary things that a coder and a biller gets when they first submit a claim. So pre-certification is the process of confirming whether or not a test is going to be covered by the insurance. It's very good to be done to make sure that if your documentation is correct, you're going to end up getting a payout. Pre-authorization, as I'm sure all of you know, and it is a big pain in the butt for most offices, is that they tend to have insurance companies that will not cover specific services as a formulary. They require the doctor to justify the medical necessity in order for them to pay for the service. And predetermination is a question of how much the insurer will pay out for the specific service that's rendered. So Medicare used to require these. Now the private insurances have gotten involved, and this is the standard of care now. This is what they're doing. So it's important for us to be aware of it. So how do we complete an electronic claim? The coding and the billing staff, they use the electronic claim system which has practice management software in it now. We no longer use the paper superbill. We're using the EMR and all of the documentation that the doctor put into the EMR in order to generate the bill. So the superbill is provided to the staff. The staff access the patient files in the software, the medical record. The staff then codes for the services that are provided, and the claim is sent out. The claim is submitted, and then the insurance, they decide on whether they're going to be paid or not paid. So there's a difference between a clean claim, a rejected claim, pending claim, and a dirty claim. Clean claims are submitted on time, all of the information is correct, and everything submitted for the insurance company is appropriate. rejected claim cannot be processed because there's some form of missing critical information. This is usually a problem that happens with the front staff. Something incorrect is there, so it will be rejected right away. If you have a patient who you prescribe or you order a sleep study for, and the insurance doesn't feel, they feel like they need more information to justify allowing for these polysomnography to be done, typically they'll go pending. Pending means that it's going to be escalated to a higher level where a doctor or another healthcare professional is going to review the documentation that's provided in order to make a decision on the claim. And typically, the person will either ask for more information from the facility, or they will decide on accepting or rejecting the claim. So Medicare has the categories for the claims that are not clean. I mentioned some of them: incomplete, missing information, invalid, claims that are illogical. Dirty claims are the ones that are submitted with errors, and deleted claims are claims that were canceled or voided. So there are several different clearinghouses that are used by many facilities. It's a business that accepts the claims from the providers, and they're a median between the insurance companies and the providers. They take the information, they look at it in detail, and they make a decision on whether it's justified to send this to the insurance company, it's clean, or if more information is needed. It's a way to decrease the time in which you go from a submission to approval. Clearinghouses are really good. Let's say you're in a practice, you're billing, and you notice that a lot of your claims are getting denied. Using a clearinghouse will help in that respect because they'll be able to identify for you what area is the problem. Along the chain of command, there's a lot of things that can happen. Is it a problem in the front staff in being able to adequately take down the patient's information? Is it a problem with the documentation of the physician or the healthcare professional that more information is needed? The clearinghouses usually will take in the claims, will clean them, and then send them to the insurance companies to ensure that the payout is happening. So it's a good option to use. Some of them are monthly fees, and other ones are based on how many claims you submit to them. It's a good measure to use if you're starting up a business or if you're in a practice that does have a lot of denials. So ERAs, electronic remittance advice. So the insurer will respond to a provider with information about the payment status using an ERA. It's also known as an explanation of benefits. So the providers usually establish an electronic funds transfer with the insurances, and it's important to review all of the ERAs to compare the payments that you're receiving for the diagnosis that you're providing. So if you have a bunch of different diagnostic codes in there and then it's a procedure codes, they might pay you a certain amount for a certain amount of diagnostic codes and exclude some of those codes that you were billing for. So if the payout is less than what you had anticipated, this is why it's important to review the ERAs to see what was covered and what wasn't. And the appeals process. So this is the most variable process that exists in this realm of coding and billing. It varies from insurer to insurer. Medicare has 5 levels, and insurance companies piggyback on all of the information that Medicare usually provides. So it starts out with a peer-to-peer where a doctor will receive a call from another physician that is employed by the insurance company. He will then discuss the case with you, or he will ask you to justify why you're ordering a specific thing. And if he's not happy with the level of detail that you provide to him or her, then he will make a decision whether to deny the case or to approve the case. If the case is denied, then you can move to appeals. The appeals process is that you submit all of the documentation that supports the idea that yes, this patient did need a sleep study. A good example is that you have a patient who looks like they need a sleep study, they're overweight, they have a big neck size, their Malapity classification is high. You see everything that you need to give you the justification to order a sleep study. You order the sleep study, it's done for more than 6 hours, it doesn't show sleep apnea. The procedure might be denied and the visit might be denied based off of that. So an appeals process will be done to justify, yes, this patient did need it because they met all of the criteria in order for that sleep study to be performed. Now, if the paper denial happens after they receive all your documentation, you get a denial. The road doesn't end there. And most people think that the road does end there. But you can request to the insurance companies to have a third party review the appeals process. What that does is the insurance company has to pay somebody outside of their organization to review the case. That organization will review the case and use evidence-based medicine to justify whether they should approve or deny the case. About 80% of the time, cases are approved in that process, if the documentation supports it. So Medicare has levels where you can even go to a district court in order for you to appeal the process. You know, it's time consuming and there's a lot of time. Generally, I worked with a doctor who was billing at dual diagnosis rehab. He would get denials all the time from insurances. He would go through the appeals process, get denials, and then he would go through the third-party process. Typically takes about a year to get paid. That is a year of time that it's taking, that is a year of time that you do not have that funding. And so it does become cumbersome for a practice that needs to stay afloat. So the process is time. They're trying to wait us out. But essentially, that is most of what I have to tell you about the appeals process, about diagnostic codes, procedure codes, and E&M codes. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how it works, and you can identify some pitfalls within your practice in order for you to make sure that you can bill at the highest level and then code at the highest level. So I have a case presentation that I took from the American Thoracic Society that I modified for billing and coding to drive home the examples. So we have a person, Mr. Simon Applegate. He's a 55-year-old male. He comes to your office, he complains of dyspnea. He's gained 10 pounds over the past 6 months, and he feels that his breathing is more difficult when he walks up a flight of stairs. There's been no cough or sputum production. He has no other respiratory complaints. He's here at the insistence of his wife. He feels that he probably will be back to normal if he loses some weight. He has a history of childhood asthma, hasn't had any exacerbations as an adult. His past medical history is also relevant for hypertension, recently diagnosed insulin diabetes and hyperlipidemia, insulin-dependent diabetes. He's an ex-smoker, has a 10-year PAC history, works as a banker and executive, so pretty sedentary lifestyle, and is married to 2 kids. Denies any occupational exposures. Wife is at the visit as well. She mentions that he's been more tired lately. He's been coming home. He's been having trouble concentrating on tasks. He falls asleep before dinner is ready. And he often has restless nights. She's getting tired of hearing him snore. She does little else, he does little else but sleep during the weekends, and she's worried that it might be a sign of depression. So based off of what was written in this HPI thus far, here are some of the salient points. 55 years old, having a past medical history that's here. Hypertension, insulin-dependent diabetes, and hyperlipidemia. There's some social history in here with the PAC year history. The history of presenting illness with a shortness of breath. Some more information that we would want. How long has it been happening for? Is there any exacerbating factors? And what we can hear when you walk upstairs? Make it better. Going through the Socrates method in order for you to adequately identify their chief complaint. And then also, the ancillary information at the end there is really good. Trouble concentrating, dozing off in front of the TV, having restless sleep, loud snoring. These start to get you to justify, okay, this patient might have sleep apnea. So on further questioning, Mr. Applegate says he's been more sleepy as of late. On occasion, he's fallen asleep during meetings, and his colleagues got to nudge him so that he can stop snoring. He usually goes to bed around 11 o'clock. He falls asleep very quickly, but wakes up several times at night to impede. He wakes up at 7 a.m. and gets ready for work. He has to drag himself out of bed. His Epstein sleepiness score is 12 out of 24. He doesn't take naps during the week, but tries to catch up during the weekends, takes afternoon naps. He has not been in any car accidents due to sleepiness, and drinks 2 cups of coffee with several caffeinated beverages throughout the day. So in terms of the HPI here, we have a lot more information. We have a justification with an evidence-based scale that is available online, the Epstein sleepiness score. I'm sorry, Epworth. His physical exam is remarkable for blood pressure of 150/70, oxygen stats of 95, BMI of 35, Mallampini classification of 3, high arch palate, neck size of 17.5. Respiratory, cardiac, and abdominal examinations are otherwise remarkable. So some of the salient points here: falling asleep during the meeting, so it's affecting not only his home life, it's affecting his work life. There's 2 different environments. Wakes up several times at night, has to drag himself out of bed. Justification with the Epworth sleepiness score. And risk factors: hasn't been in any car accidents. Social factors: drinking, the amount of caffeine that he's drinking. And in the physical exam, there's some good information that's written here: the blood pressure, the O2 sat, the BMI, the Mallampini score, and the neck size. So, in terms of the extent of the history, what do we think is the level? Based off of what we collected, it's pretty good. It's not a brief history. It's an extended history. And so that meets the criteria for the history of presenting illness. Was there a review of systems? No. So automatically, because in a new patient that you're seeing, it is all 3 components need to be there in order for you to assign the actual type of history. This is going to be a problem-focused exam. And again, there wasn't much written about his past medical history. It said that he has diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, how long has it been going on, what medications has the patient used, what trials, medication trials have they used for the specific illness, past family history, is there any family history of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, the social factors as well, what is his level of activity at home. Those are all important things to be able to identify your PFSH as complete and comprehensive. The physical exam that was written here, I would say that it is between a problem focus and an expanded problem focus. It had some really good information in regards to the sleep to justify a polysomnography, but in terms of the actual physical exam, not very much information was given to us at all. And so it's important for you to be able to document that you've done a full physical exam on this patient in order for it to be a comprehensive assessment. So the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, Dr. Suarez mentioned it. If you have a number of 10 or above, then it warrants you seeking medical treatment. So it's a good way for you to screen your patients. I'm sure that it was talked about the Mallampini classification between 3 and 4. That will give you a justification for diagnosing obstructive sleep apnea, as well as ordering a polysomnography. So, how would we build this? You know, our billing codes for a new patient are 201 to 205. The history would be problem-focused, so that the HPI was extended, but there was no review of systems. There was no real past medical, family, or social history. The examination was expanded problem-focused. The medical decision-making was moderate complexity because we will be billing. In our diagnosis, as you can see here, I apologize for the repeat, G47.33. But also we bill for the diabetes, we bill for the hypertension, we bill for the hyperlipidemia, and the personal history of nicotine dependence. This gives the coder and the biller all of the documentation that they need to support ordering a polysomnography. The procedure code will be 8510, 98510. The polysomnography sleep staging with 4 or more channels that are recorded. So you order the sleep study, and you get the results. The sleep architecture is more than 6 hours. Sleep efficiency is 91.5%. You have the different levels and stages of sleep. Sleep latency, the WASO was 35.5 minutes. You have an AHI, you have an RDI, and you have an apneic episode of below 88 for more than 2 minutes. Based off of the tracings that we have here, you can see that multiple leads were used to build. So you have chest rise, abdominal rise, you have the airflow, EKG, and as well as the heart rate that's being measured and the O2 saturations. So based off the polysomnography results, you make the treatment recommendations. Mr. Applegate, he asks whether there's a relationship between sleep apnea and his recent diagnosis of high blood pressure and diabetes. Wants to know if there's an impact, what impact, if any, his treatment will have on his health. So after some discussion, Mr. Applegate accepts the idea that he should get CPAP, and so you arrange for an in-lab CPAP titration, and after reviewing the results, you prescribe a CPAP with 12 centimeters of water and medium-sized full-face mask. The code that you use is 95811. So on follow-up, Mr. Applegate returns. He feels great. He's great improvement in his sleepiness. He's been paying attention to his diet. He's been exercising. He's lost 10 pounds. He reports that he doesn't think that he needs a CPAP anymore. He's using it still 5 hours a day and has difficulty with it in the initial, but he maintains and uses it throughout the night. And he has a humidifier that has helped him somewhat. So in the coding and billing, established for this patient, number 99211 to 215,